Well, let's talk about expectations because when Mark Carney was elected prime minister back in late April, the media, the elites, and every globalist from Davos to downtown Toronto rushed to assure all of us Canadians that we were finally in capable hands. A seasoned economist, a steady hand, a global thought leader, someone who could bring discipline to a fractured government and stability to a struggling economy. He was pitched as Canada's grown up in the room, the man who could take on Donald Trump, stabilize our trade relationship, restore Canada's position in the G7, and be a unifying voice for progress. But here we sit. 3 months later, we've got a verdict. And not from me, from a little thing we like to call reality. Mark Carney is all talk, no trade, no plan, and no control. And if you look closely at everything he's promised since April, it becomes painfully obvious. He doesn't have a handle on anything, not trade, not the economy, not even his own caucus. So, today, let's run through the tape. Here we go.
Welcome to Bakes on Things.
Welcome back to Bakes on Things. I'm Chris Baker. Thanks for liking, subscribing, and commenting. The discussion has been great the last few videos. Let's keep it going. And today, we're going to begin with the comment he just made on July 15th, just yesterday. Carney told reporters that he expects trade talks with the U.S. to intensify before the self-imposed August 1st deadline. Great. That sounds very promising. Except for one thing, and this is a big except. He said the exact same thing in May, and again in early June, and again right before the G7 summit. And what has actually happened? Absolutely nothing. There's no signed trade framework. There's no timeline. There's no negotiating structure. There's not even a formal working group. He's saying he's negotiating behind closed doors by himself with Donald Trump, which we know isn't happening because he was just in Australia. The only concrete move we've seen was Canada's unilateral withdrawal of the digital services tax, which was the Liberals' golden goose for the past 2 years. They championed it as a progressive tax reform to rein in our big tech and U.S. big tech. But when Donald Trump told Carney that trade talks were off the table unless that DST was gone, what did Carney do? Well, he waited for 24 hours like a crybaby and then caved. No negotiation, no reciprocity, no concessions from the U.S. toward our future trade deal, just total and utter surrender. And you can't argue that, Liberals, because nothing's come from it since. The Liberals sold this as a smart move, a way to clear a path for serious discussions. But those serious discussions, well, where are they? Where's the intensification you talked about that would come when that tax was removed? Well, it hasn't happened, not once. Because Donald Trump is many things, but he's not subtle. He's a deal maker. When he wants something, he says it. When he makes a demand, he expects a response. Instead, Carney keeps thinking that he can show up to the room with poetic metaphors and press conferences and vague promises that trades will intensify and then walk out with a deal. But Trump doesn't play word salad. He plays results, and Carney just keeps losing over and over and over again. So here we are meeting with the first ministers yet again. Here we are meeting with the cabinet yet again in the exact same position that we were before. But let's rewind back to the 2025 G7 summit, because this isn't the only failure we've had so far. The first major international test of Carney's leadership was that G7 meeting, where he claimed that the summit would show Canada leading on climate, trade, and global stability. And let's break that down based on what's happened since. Well, on climate, for example, he brought 0 new targets. He just used old rhetoric, vague mentions of net zero pathways, and a PR stunt about carbon finance that even Europe did not care about, and in fact has backtracked themselves on since the G7 meetings. Crazy. On trade, Trump left early. Italy's PM rolled her eyes during talk of trade, and the UK avoided Carney altogether. There was no bilateral agreement, no joint Canada US statement, no economic outcome whatsoever from the G7. A complete flop. The only real action Carney got was a 45-minute hallway chat with Donald Trump, which he then tried to spin into a diplomatic breakthrough, but here we sit with a target of August 1st and no progress made. And yet again, no results on the rest of it either. Not even a signed statement of intent like the UK got when they secured a pathway to a free trade agreement with the US back in the spring. We don't even have that. Carney didn't bring home a plan. He brought home a pin. It's not a Canada pin. He would never wear that. He bought a Canada-US lapel pin, which CTV tried to spin as some kind of symbolic victory before quietly deleting the story when it became clear how pathetic that sounded. Yeah, go look for that story. It's gone. You don't put a pin on a trade deficit. You don't pay off debt with symbolism. That's just not how you do it. And all this talk of it's coming, it's coming, it's coming is going to just fall flat on its face. And so here we sit. Carney keeps claiming that he's managing a complex economic transition for this country, which is just simply code for I have no idea how to fix what's broken, so I'll just rebrand it as some kind of transformation like we do, I don't know, in the executive halls of a business. Ever heard of transformational change? He said inflation was under control in May. By July, food prices were up again, mortgage renewals are crushing families, grocery chains are raising prices, and there's no carbon tax excuse anymore, and inflation rose 1.9% in June. He said foreign investment would return because of his leadership, but in fact, in the latest Bank of Canada bulletin, foreign direct investment is down again, especially in the energy and infrastructure sectors. Why? Because of Bill C-5, Carney's own legislative Frankenstein, which gave veto powers to provinces, indigenous groups, and environmental panels not to build pipelines, but to stop them. And businesses have said, not good enough, we're out. He told Canadians Bill C-5 would streamline approvals while simultaneously giving every stakeholder the power to block any of the projects. And that is so he doesn't get blamed when it happens. How is that streamlining? It's not. It's replacing red tape with redder tape. It's stall tactic central. It's designed to let Carney transfer blame when things don't go right. He doesn't want to be the one saying no to pipelines. He wants to have a panel to say no. And so he can smile and say, well, we tried, guys, but they said no. This is cowardice disguised as governance, and it continues even more today. The myth of Trump's unpredictability has been so overplayed by this government that nobody's believing it anymore. The line Carney supporters always fall back on is, well, Donald Trump is crazy. Donald Trump is a wild card. You can't predict Donald Trump. The economy is volatile. Things change. All of these excuses continue to be thrown at us. But if we unpack that nonsense, Donald Trump is not unpredictable at all. He's just really blunt. He is transactional, and above all else, he is consistent. He continues to go back to tariffs. Why can't we predict that? He said he didn't want the digital services tax, and he got it removed. That's just efficiency. He said trade talks wouldn't happen unless Canada dropped its anti-American policies. And guess what, folks? He meant it. That's not an efficiency. He said NATO needed to hit 2% or less, or else, Canada would not get into a trade deal with him at the G7 summit. He just wants that. There's nothing random about any of this. There's no mystery. What's unpredictable is Mark Carney pretending to be surprised that actions have consequences. And here's the kicker. Carney is supposed to be the adult in the room, a world-class economist, a former central bank governor, the man who lectures at the World Economic Forum about global financial resilience. So why does he suddenly get a pass when his forecasts flop? When his trade plans absolutely stall or never start, when his own legislation contradicts itself in 19 different places. Imagine if Donald Trump or Pierre Poilievre said they expected trade talks to intensify soon 3 separate times with no evidence and no follow-up. The media would absolutely roast them. But when Mark Carney does it, he gets another round of applause for staying calm. Mark, good job. Good job. We'll get this done. No, we won't. That's not leadership. That is absolute, utter theater, and it can't stand any longer. The time is up, Mark. Do you hear us in Canada? Time's up. It's been nearly 3 months since Mark Carney was handed the keys to our country. He's not new anymore. He's not adjusting. He's on vacation. He's not settling in. This is the job. And he walked away from it for a 12-week vacation right after starting it. If I did that at a brand new job, I wouldn't make it through my 3-month probation. And so far, his record looks like this: no trade deal, no real progress with the U.S., no credibility at the G7, no economic rebound, no housing solution, no energy plan, no grip on reality. And yet, every time he steps to a microphone, he tells us to stay the course, warns us of the crisis of a lifetime, or that intensification is imminent in trade talks, or that progress just takes time, Canada. Well, here's the truth. The UK made progress weeks into their trade negotiations. Progress requires clarity, action, conviction, and it frickin' requires a spine. Not empty buzzwords, strategic ambiguity, or sophisticated inaction. Carney has spent a career being impressive in rooms full of people who never get their hands dirty. But now he's leading a country, and he needs to roll his sleeves up, and that requires getting real. He's not running a hedge fund anymore. He's running Canada. And right now, it's being run right into the ground. Don't be fooled anymore by smooth language. Don't be distracted by international credentials. Don't mistake delay for diplomacy. Carney is not too sophisticated to get results. He's too scared to take responsibility for them. And that's the big difference here. And unless Canadians start asking for receipts, we're going to be fed recycled rhetoric all the way to recession. He's literally sitting down with his first ministers again. Why? Why? We've had these meetings already. Get to work. Thanks for watching Bakes on Things. I'm Chris Baker. Sorry for getting a little wound up today, but today this is the most overhyped prime minister, and I can't stand it any longer. A banker in a suit with no deal in hand, 3 months in, it's frustrating. Subscribe, share, comment below. Let's have this discussion and hold this guy accountable, because the clock is ticking and the rest of the world is waiting. We'll see you tomorrow.